Well, to talk a bit more about that, I'm joined in the studio by a legal expert, Eric Lisann. Good to see you, Eric.
Hello,
you were listening to that testimony as well, which is expected to go on for a lot longer. Jeff Sessions really answering some tough questions there. He did defend himself very strongly, though, didn't he? A detestable lie, scurrilous allegations being made about me. He's really not taking this one on the chin, is he?
Well, he feels like he has taken it on the chin, and that's why he really wanted to come back swinging, and he came out swinging. He said right out of the gates, so to speak, I have not colluded with the Russians. There's nothing here, and I think it's going to be very hard to get anything out of him on that line of questioning. The problem for him is that he did not disclose initially at his confirmation hearings that he had the two prior contacts that are undisputed that he had. Now there supposedly has been evidence, again, that's the subject of a leak, that there was a third contact. He says quite clearly he's had no recollection of that, as has been said in Washington before. I think the Washington Post coined the phrase. Sergei Kislyak, the Russian ambassador, has turned into the world's most forgettable man. Although looking at him, he's not a forgettable figure, but certainly Jeff Sessions doesn't have any further recollections of him that he's ever going to admit to.
He can't remember having conversations with him.
Yeah, he says he just has no recollection of it whatsoever. Now, what's interesting is then if that's the case, and I think that's what Senator Burr was sort of getting to in his questioning, why did all of a sudden did he recuse himself? Because he had never said he would recuse himself up until during his confirmation hearings when all this was already roiling about, and then when he did it, it seemed very sudden. He hasn't really explain that other than he went through this sort of tedious reading of the Justice Department regulations, which are more of a common sense thing, that you can't be investigating yourself. And he says, and so he is conceding, I was a principal advisor to the campaign was being investigated, therefore how can I oversee an investigation into myself, essentially. But if that's the case, why did it take him so long to come to that conclusion? That's probably something he's going to be questioned about down the road here.
And he also made some comments, didn't he, Eric, on Donald Trump's relationship with James Comey, which is how the senators kicked off this hearing, in fact. Senator Richard Burr there saying that it was very worrying to hear the former head of the FBI testifying that he was so nervous about his meetings with Donald Trump. He was worried that Donald Trump would lie about him afterwards. And Sessions there was saying, look, there's nothing wrong with the president having a relationship and talking to the head of the FBI. What is problematic is when they're talking about ongoing investigations.
Right. He was being a little bit disingenuous there by sort of deflecting what's going on, because he said, look, he even talked to Obama, President Obama, of course. President Obama talked to him about general, one conversation in 8 years, or however long it was that Comey was there, one conversation about racial issues at the FBI, obviously not having anything to do with an investigation concerning the White House staff, and the second time just to say goodbye. Nobody's saying those are anything wrong with that. But what Comey's point was, it's exceedingly rare for to begin with for the FBI director to be talking directly with the president. And what Attorney General Sessions is sort of deflecting here is the rareness of that by itself. And and by saying, well, there's nothing wrong for the two of them to be talking, it's misleading, because clearly what are they going to be talking about? They've got nothing else to talk about, the way things have been going, and every one of these conversations was about the Russia investigation. So his testimony was a little bit disingenuous, but he's a career politician, and the bottom line is he's conceding that it could have been inappropriate, but he took the tack of turning it around on Comey, so according to him, and saying you are the one who's responsible for making sure these kinds of conversations don't happen.
Right.
And there may be some validity to that.
And just to bring you up to date, Sessions has just said that he will not comment on conversations he had privately with President Trump. So it looks like we will not be getting the same kind of testimony as we heard from James Comey. We won't be finding out what was said in those conversations. Is that to be expected?
You know, that's an interesting legal issue. It could be viewed as a dodge because the president himself didn't. It's a privilege. It's called executive privilege. The president himself did not assert it, and the president could have given his permission for Sessions to talk about it. But here Sessions is just going out of his way to protect the president. Again, a politician's move here to say, well, I'm not going to talk about anything that I consider to be private, even if it's not classified. He's just unilaterally taking that upon himself. That'll be probably discussed later on as well.
All right, and just one more thing. Sessions saying he never had any conversations with Comey about his performance before he was fired. So it looks like they'll be getting into that now.
Yes, they will. But, you know, Sessions, he knew that he was in for, he called for this meeting. He knew that he was not looking good after Director Comey's testimony, and he's here really to defend himself, and that means defending the president as well.
All right, Eric, thank you very much indeed. Eric Lisann there explaining all of that to us. Let's take a short break. We'll be coming back with more headlines for you right after this. Stay with us.